You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq, Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today. Oh wow, what an interesting day in the coffee shop. Ann Janzer, how you doing today?
I'm fine, Jessie. Fancy meeting you here.
Amazing, isn't it? So, what's the hot beverage in your mug today?
The hot beverage, well, coffee always, right? I mean, it's it's always coffee.
I did a British author a couple months back, and of course he was a tea drinker.
If I have to confess, I love tea. I drink tea more often than coffee, but I do really cherish a cup of coffee. And in fact, 2 of my books feature a cup of coffee on the cover art. So you know that there's a real connection here between you and me in this coffee shop, virtual coffee shop.
Oh, there definitely has to be. And personally, I'm a coffee in the morning, and in the winter evenings, give me that hot cup of tea.
Exactly.
So you mentioned 2 books. What 2?
So I have 2 books that are both about writing. One is called The Writer's Process, and it's about the inner game of writing, how we balance being creative and being productive as writers. And the other one, which I just published last month, is called The Workplace Writer's Process. And it's about what I like to call the team sport of writing. If you are working in an organization and writing either collaboratively with other people or having to write on behalf of the organization, how do you do that as effectively as possible? So 2 different aspects of writing.
Yes, one definitely sounds more like it's geared towards the business profession.
Definitely. The second book is for the business professional. A lot of people have to write, in their day jobs. And, you read these stories about famous authors who also had these jobs, in insurance agents and agencies. And you think, I wonder how they were as insurance agents, because they couldn't have, Melville or someone, it's like, write a 1,000-page policy or something. The things that make you a good writer aren't the same things that make you good in your job if you have to write on the job. So they're kind of different sets of skills.
You are the second person to bring that to my attention. I have an editor friend who espouses much the same thing. So
yes.
She used to do a lot of scientific writing and now writes both fiction and nonfiction. She's like, it takes a whole different brain set.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
So tell me about the writer's process.
The writer's process. Yeah, I think that's probably the one that is, any kind of way that you write, there might be things you find of interest in there. The book, was really my taking a look at the way that we write most effectively. Over the course of my career, I spent years as a freelance writer working for technology companies. They'd hire me to come and work on a project, write in the voice of the brand. I figured out ways to be as productive as possible, but also be creative and have fun and enjoy the work. And so I tried to look at those processes, and then I realized really that as writers, it almost doesn't matter what we're writing. We're all using some same sets of mental processes. We all begin with the same writing tool, which is the human brain, right? And we have to figure out how to make the brain do what we want, how to give us the discipline to work, and yet how to think creatively for fresh ideas and stories, and how to balance those processes. So this book was an exploration of that. I looked a little bit of cognitive science things. I talked to a lot of other writers, and I researched what famous authors do, and I found that really there's just an awful lot in common that we share, and we know a lot of ways we can share each other's experiences, our successes, as well as the problems that we run into. We can all learn from each other and from the cognitive scientists as well in terms of what they tell us about how we think and how we behave. That was a long-winded answer.
That's okay. It sounds fascinating. It truly does. It sounds like one of those books where no matter whether you're writing science fiction, fantasy, or a memoir, you could pick up a thing or two.
Yes. I mean, it's funny because I wrote it and I'm thinking, well, really, I know most about nonfiction writing. So I wrote it and I put it out in the world thinking that it would make the most sense to nonfiction authors like myself. But I heard a lot from friends who are novelists or people who write mysteries or children's book authors that really there's a lot of fairly universal things in there about creativity and productivity that apply to us all. This is like, again, I said it's more about the inner game of writing than the actual words you're putting on the paper. I feel like if you want to be a better writer, the first place to look is how to improve your process so that you can learn and improve and be more productive and more creative.
Well, I must admit, I have tried to write. I have tried and tried and tried. And as much as I love talking to authors and love reading books, I can devour a book on any subject.
Mm-hmm.
Fiction, nonfiction. My Kindle has over 4,000 books on it.
Wow.
And they range in things from, true spy things like Robert Hansen and his betrayal of America to Brad Thor's latest thriller.
Aha.
So, and then I've got science fiction, fantasy, romance. My Kindle is literally runs the gamut.
Aren't you glad that you don't have to actually lug all those books around?
I love
the
my
Kindle's
Kindle.
A great thing. Yeah.
I love my Kindle. It's rarely far from me.
Yeah.
So, as much as I would like to learn how to write, it's just not something I enjoy. I'd rather be reading.
Well, okay, fair enough. Not everybody is a writer. That, in the sense of everybody can be a writer, but if you don't enjoy it, then that's not where you should be spending your time. Yeah.
Usually when I try, I'd either rather be writing or rather be on air.
Yeah, that's right. You do things many other people cannot, which is broadcasting live on air.
It's a fun hobby. Yeah. Everybody needs one.
Absolutely. And it is likewise creative. It is creative.
Oh, yes. I have my antics I pull on air on a regular basis that my regular listeners of both shows would recognize. So when you went to write this book, did you plot it all out and have it organized, like chapter 1 was going to be about this and chapter 2 was going to be about that? Or did you get the information down and then figure out the best order? Or how did you go about this?
So I actually have a process that I've used for all my books so far. I've written a third one, which is about marketing, which is the very first book that I wrote. And in each case, what I do first is I do the research, but what it's not just reading other people's books and reading research and interviewing. I do what I call inner research, which is to simply write about a topic. It's before I even knew exactly what the book was going to be. I just opened up some files, and every day I would just write whatever occurred to me. I knew I wanted to write about the writing process, so I started just writing thoughts, following conversations in sort of a free writing mode. And as I did that, when I really write something, that's when I think deeply about it. So for me, writing is a way of thinking deeply and focusing. And I ended up with, I don't know, 25,000 words of ideas, thoughts that would trigger other research. I would go off and get a book to read. So I do that. And when I've done what I call that inner research, as well as whatever external research, then I'm ready to figure out what the structure of the book is and what the book is really about and who's the real audience. And I outline before and start filling out the outline as I go.
Okay, so you do more or less what I call plotting your book out, even though yours isn't waiting for the huge climax. It's one of those, you do plot the book out.
So, I mean, because it's not fiction. I mean, there's the whole plotters and pantsers debate, right? And it's not fiction, but so I need to have a plot. I don't want to, there's nothing worse than a nonfiction book that just kind of rambles and wanders off and ends off in the ether somewhere. I don't know if you've ever read any of those. I know I have. It's like, wait, why did we go past chapter 3 anyway? I don't want to write that. I want to write a book that makes sense as a whole thing. But if you think about it, my pantsing portion, my just sort of exploration happens before I'm writing, when I'm doing all of that free writing of really exploring the different ideas without any firm idea of where I'm going to go. And I do end up discarding most of that writing, but there's a lot of it I'm able to pull things from.
So maybe one phrase or one sentence that you really like, or the way you explain this one little nugget that you pull, but the rest of it, yeah, you can go in the outtakes folder.
Yeah, exactly. And it's okay. It's okay to have outtakes. I mean, I don't really figure out what I think about something until I'm writing about it. So
that's very fascinating. I mean, for me, I don't start delving into a subject until I'm ready to put it on air. Once I decide that this subject is something I'm going to bring up on air extensively, because sometimes I'll do extra episodes of my main show which focuses on news and current events, and I will spend days or weeks putting together the points I want to make. And then I'll grab a cheater card, much like I did do for all my coffee shop interviews, and I'll put my 5 or 6 main points I want to make down on that card. Never more than that. And then I just prop it up next to my monitor, and away I go.
So you decide, you focus on a topic that you know you're going to want to air. You know it's deep enough before you go into the work of putting together your points.
Well, for example, I did a special episode on Did We Pay a Ransom for Bo Bergdahl?
Okay.
There was enough there that I knew I had a topic.
Right.
The one I'm currently working on, and this is kind of a spoiler alert for my fans, but that's okay. I'm working on the UN Human Rights Council and how some of these countries become members.
Oh, yeah, that's so these are all really meaty topics. I mean, you know there's enough in there before you start that you're not going to nothing to say on this broadcast. Right?
Well, just like North Korea. I can do a whole hour on North Korea with a couple of audio clips almost off the cuff at this point, because between North Korea and the Middle East, it's come up so much in international news.
Right.
That
yes,
I know a lot of the facts and figures and numbers and main points off the top of my head at this point.
So you are constantly, in a sense, researching by just listening and reading and following, staying current on these things. You're constantly researching, and then a part of your brain knows that you may want to broadcast on it. So you are filtering and filing away these ideas to use as fodder for when you're ready to do a broadcast.
Exactly. I mean, when I go to prep my regular show, my Monday through Thursday show, I start my show prep no more than 2 hours before my show.
Mm-hmm.
And all I do is I pull up a website and I literally start searching international news. And then I start going to different international news sites, U.S. news sites, and I pick out either something that interests me or something that's been all over the mainstream media, but I want to take it to another level that they didn't take the time to do, because U.S. news is obviously going to focus more on what's going on here than the fact that the Iranian elections had a Tinder-style app.
Interesting.
I mean, it's just that odd kind of fact that'll get me going, wait a minute, tell me more about this, and I'll start digging around in it.
Right, right. So, to some extent, my writing process is kind of like you looking around in the news. I'll open up the free writing and start digging around in what's going on in my brain and what I hear. But also the fact that I'm doing this kind of free writing on a topic makes me, like you, more alert to things when I encounter them in the world. It's like I have this filter on and now I see things. And I'm sure when you listen to a news, you're filtering it through topic for a broadcast. This fits into this bucket and this might be an interesting thing to talk about.
Exactly. So
you have these mental processes working in the background, sort of like free virtual assistants gathering content for you.
I never thought of it that way, but I probably do because I am a self-proclaimed news junkie.
Yeah. I'm sure you would be to do what you do, yes.
I have at least 30 news apps on my phone from all around the world, spanning the globe. I am never more than usually an arm's length away from my phone. And it's more because I don't want to miss the news than your text message. I'll let your text message sit there. I want to read this news article. I'll get back to you.
So one of the things that I, in the book, The Writer's Process, the basic premise, if I had to give you a premise, is that we have two kind of sets of mental processes that we use in writing. One is what we think of as our, so it's usually what we think of as the disciplined, the right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write, I'm going to put my butt in the chair, I'm going to work, I'm going to set a deadline, I'm going to do X number of words a day. That's the disciplined, intentional, hardworking part. And I refer to this part of us as the scribe, thinking of the poor monks who used to just copy all the books down right before there was a printing press. There were the scribes in the monasteries that just had to copy books. But then there's the other part of us, which is the nonlinear thinking, the ones making connections, the sort of creative parts that come up with the stories. Or in your case, the person who spots that thing about the Tinder app involved in the Iranian elections and sees a connection here, a really interesting connection, and files that away. And this is, I refer to as the muse, and that's sort of more of the creative part. And the successful writing requires you to be able to use and navigate both of these ways of thinking and being in the world, and actually to get them working together. And that is probably also true of successful broadcasting the way that you do. It requires both the discipline, the checking the levels, the being scheduled, the doing the research, but also being able to pull in those creative parts to find the interesting connections, things like that.
I find the connections fascinating, and I have to say my showtime waits for no one, including me. When it's time for my show to go on, ready or not.
Deadlines are wonderful things, aren't they?
And I have one 4 nights a week. It might as well be carved in stone. Now, there are the freak times I will have to use a replay or a bonus play or a best of if something beyond my control comes up.
Sure, life happens.
Exactly, but time waits for no one, and the news is ever changing.
Right.
So I do feel the pressure to do as much up to that last second as I can. Now, as a writer, do you constantly edit your books? Like, if you were to pick up one of your books now, would you want to make changes to it?
That's a good question. I try not to look at it with those eyes once it's really done and out in the world. I also try to do enough editing and revision before it goes out that I know that I've taken it to 95%. Yeah, there's always going to be another 5%. I could have chosen a better word here or rephrased that there. But, life is short. But, that's an interesting point, that inner critic, that inner editor, that's another thing that we really have to keep in balance. I think, I feel very strongly that when you're actually writing, when you're actually creating that first draft, it's more important to just write it and try to keep the editor outside the door, and then leave time for editing and revision and that critical analysis and changing. Because if you try to edit while you're drafting, you often will constrain your creativity, constrain the flow. You will just kind of start shooting down everything that comes up rather than running with it, and be less productive and probably less happy. Probably less happy.
So what are your top 2 or 3 tips that you like to bring up when you're talking to authors or writers?
My real top tip is that the best advice I have for any writer is to break apart the writing process into its component pieces. I think that when some of us don't feel like we write, if you sit down and it's hard to write, it's probably because we're trying to start in the middle of what should be a longer process. So I always begin with a little bit of research. And like I said, it might be that inner research of free writing, or it might be, reading, or just gathering my thoughts. I outline. I do a first draft that is ugly and filled with terrible phrasing, and then I go back and I revise that draft, and then I'll polish and proofread and put it out in the world. When I divide it into those steps, it takes the pressure off to make it perfect at any one particular time, and it lets me bring the right mental system to the right phase of the work too, which is really helpful. So I'm not bringing that critical editor when I'm trying to get the first draft down.
I'd have to say, from what I know of the writing community, and I'm going to put you in what I feel is rather esteemed company. Number 1, New York Times bestselling author Brad Thorse said he one time faced writer's block, and the way he got over it was giving himself permission to write a crappy first draft.
It's so important, that's great. I think writer's block happens either because your inner critic is so, you're trying to not put something down unless it's great, and that never works. Or you're trying to really start writing before you've done the work to prime the pump. You've done the research and the thought and the incubation, and let your creative processes flow on the topic a little bit before you try to start writing. So I think writer's block is usually a sign of a broken process, not like some kind of block from on high.
Now, do you recommend that writers do things like write at the same time each day, or have a set schedule that they follow?
So that's one. I think you got to figure out what works for you personally. I do think that everybody, the one thing I would suggest is a daily writing practice, that you try to do some amount of writing every day. A lot of people swear it needs to be at the same time. It's like, if it works for you to get up early, that's great. If it works to be at the same time, whatever's going to set you up for success is what you should do. But, there I feel like we have differences. Some people are like, I like to write late at night, or I like to early in the morning, or I will be struck by inspiration in the shower and rush out dripping and go to the laptop. Whatever it may be. That's kind of personal, what works for you. But I think it is important to show up and write something every day, because you're priming your brain to say, I'm going to keep doing this. So you might as well be looking for ideas when I'm not writing, because I'm going to keep showing up at this laptop or this notebook and writing every day. So I'm not one of those ones who swears by a specific, create your sacred space, say your chants. I know, like, if it works for you, that's great. That's what you should do.
I have one writer friend who says they can't write at home, at least not in the main areas of their house, because they get distracted. They're a stay-at-home parent. They get distracted by the laundry and the dishes and the fact that the floor needs mopping and things like that. So they did actually create an office space where they can go into another room and close the door on all the distractions.
Shutting out distractions is very important. So yes, that makes a lot of sense, especially, when you've got little kids, or, or if you're working at home, or finding a space where you can work without distractions is really helpful. But if you're, what do I want to say? You need to set yourself up for success however you can. That's exactly. And this person sounds like they've really found what works for them, and that's great. What is problematic is that sometimes life throws you, you're traveling, or, the roofers come and you've got to go to the library, or, whatever. Things happen. And it can be refreshing and invigorating to write somewhere different, or to roll with what, do something even on the plane if you're traveling, or on the train if you are so lucky to take a train trip or something. I don't know. It's fun to mix it up a little bit too.
Oh, I have another writer friend who once a week, while their daughter is taking dance lessons, they go to the local coffee shop.
Yeah, yeah.
And all their writing friends in their local area know, because they're part of a writers group, that they'll be at that coffee shop between this time and this time.
Yeah, you can get moral support through social groups like that, through settings like that, which is wonderful. Yeah. Whatever it takes, wherever you find success writing. What your friend talked about, which is interesting, is that she found the things that were leading her away from writing, looking at the laundry or the kids, or, whatever, and found a way to get rid of the distractions. And that can be really, look at where you succeed, and also look at when you're not succeeding. What is it that's keeping you, is it because you're checking your texts? Is it because you're getting back on Facebook? Maybe you need to shut that down when you're trying to do some writing, things like that.
I can agree with the social media and the Facebook thing, because when I go to do my show prep, my phone is on vibrate, and all my social media accounts, save my show Twitter account, are shut down.
Yeah.
That is the one social media account I keep open. And for those of you who are new to the show, I will say Jessie is a pseudonym. You could almost call it a pen name. So it is not my real name. So it's not my only social media account. But I do this because my second husband is active duty military. And with my weekday show, I never want anything that I have to say on the air to come back to bite my husband.
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So it's my way of putting up a wall to protect him. But when it's time for show prep, I don't, unless the house is on fire and there is flame shooting out of something, I don't want to hear it.
We live in such an interrupt-driven, noisy, physically noisy, but also just, so many distractions, so many things that give us that immediate gratification, that quick dopamine fix of, ooh, look, there's a posting on Facebook, or somebody responded to my tweet. And that kind of stuff is really counterproductive to the long-term work of writing. I mean, writing is, requires, when you're in the drafting phase, it requires deep focus. And to write something like a book requires a much longer time horizon. For you, you've got each individual show, but you're actually trying to build a whole longer body of work with your show. Again, things sometimes that are worth doing take a long time to do. And to do those things, we have to silence all those little seemingly urgent but immediate short things that would take our attention from the important but not as urgent long-term work that we want to get done.
I literally called it retraining my friends and family.
Yeah.
When I first started the show, it has a time slot. And when I said, okay, this is my show prep time, I literally had to retrain all of my friends and family. I don't care how many texts you send me. I don't care what's going on with your sister's, mother's, cousin's, boyfriend's dog. I don't care. During these 3 hours a day, unless it is a true, legitimate emergency, I'm not going to be bothered with you. Now, that being said, for those true, legitimate emergencies, because I am an Army wife and an FRG, active member of FRG, Family Readiness Group, the Army Spouse Support System, I do keep my phone near me and I'll glance at the text.
Yeah. But why do we think in this society that that we have to respond instantly to everybody's text? Well, okay, a text for my kids or something. But I mean, why did we get to this sense that we are on call to everybody all the time? And do you really expect that when you send something to someone that they're going to drop what they're doing and answer your call? I mean, it's so counterproductive to focus and attention that, I've tried to get to just checking and answering email only a couple times a day. It's surprisingly hard to do. You want to do it more often, right? Because you feel like they're waiting for a response. It's tough. And I think we have to retrain ourselves as well as our family and friends about this, and just not try to give everything the urgency of immediate response.
Unless it is that true emergency.
Save it for there are, like you said, there are always things that do merit an immediate response, and those should have it. But that's not everything. I mean, that is a small subset of things, and hopefully not that often.
That's that 1%. And it happened to me one night. I had done all my show prep. I was 20 minutes away from going on the air. An Army wife texted me. She lives 2 miles from me. My water broke. My husband's not home. I need a ride to the hospital.
That was an honest to goodness, yes, appropriately, immediately urgent situation.
I had a replay dropped and was out the door in 5 minutes and on her phone in 6 going, I'm already in the car on the way. My husband's right behind me to walk your dog, close up the house, do whatever you do. Just pass me your car keys. And literally, pass my husband your house keys, get in the van. We're going to the hospital. He'll close up the house and follow with your hospital bag. Because it was
good for you. That was a true emergency. Yeah.
And that was the 1%.
Yes, right.
Hey, can we get together for coffee tomorrow at 2? I'll get back to you after I get off the air.
Right.
So, but like I said, there are those distinctions, and I agree with you. It is important. And you're talking to somebody with ADD.
Yeah.
And yet I have trained my brain that during these hours, I have to be almost hyper-focused.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like culturally, we're almost training ourselves to all be more on the ADD spectrum by these constant interruptions. And that's very damaging to, long-term focus and long-term work, like writing. Yeah. But it sounds like you've got a good strategy, and it's working for you. You've set aside these sort of sacred times to do your deep work.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to ask you, Anne, to just hang on for just a few moments. We've got to pay those ever-incumbent radio station bills known as ads. And so I'm going to pour you a fresh cup of coffee, and I will see you on the other side of the commercial break.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Well, thank y'all for hanging in there with us while we paid those ever-present radio station bills. Anne, thank you for hanging in there with me.
No problem.
Now, what advice would you give to the young writer or the new writer?
Oh, I would say that the most important thing is to start writing. And bear with me, it sounds so trite, start writing. I know that I, for years, was waiting for the good idea to write about. I wanted to write a book, but I was waiting for some perfect book idea to descend from the sky, and then I would write it. And I think that this is true of a lot of people. They would like to write a mystery or a nonfiction book or a thriller, but they're just waiting for that perfect plot. And I think that don't get all the parts of your brain engaged in this until you actually simply start writing and start working. And that's when, am I saying to be a pantser? I suppose maybe that's what I'm saying. If you're a fiction writer, just kind of start writing. Start writing. Don't be afraid to toss out, that what you write, you have to keep it all, but you have to actually start writing and working with things to really think deeply about them and discover what it is or what ideas you might want to explore. So it's rather than waiting for the good idea, write your way to the good idea. That's my best advice to to new writers.
Awesome. Now, what about someone who's younger, say a teenager that wants to start writing? Obviously, they may not have the thought process ready for a novel. What would you suggest for someone, 14, 15, 17, 13, somewhere in the teenage?
Again, I think start writing and see what happens. See where, because you may not have a decades of life experiences to draw on, but you have you have creativity, and I feel like when you're writing, you see the world a little bit differently. So I would say give yourself permission to start writing stories if that's what you're interested in, whatever your genre or thing that you're excited about is, without having to worry about it being perfect or great or publishable or any of those things. I think that certainly teenagers are often particularly hard on themselves, wanting things to be just right. And, you may or may not love the stuff that you first do, but I guarantee that if you work at it intentionally, you'll like your second story or your third story better than your first. And by the time you're doing your fourth or your fifth, you'll be writing differently, and it will be feeling differently, and you'll be just improving as a craftsperson and as an artist. So I would say don't be afraid to start writing. I wish I had done more story writing. I had this all caught up, and everything had to be really good if I created it, and I didn't have a great idea, so I couldn't write. That wrong circular thinking problem.
I think it's great, that you encourage anyone, pretty much no matter what the age, just to basically jump in with both feet and start writing.
Yeah, because I think you discover things about yourself when you write, and I think you see the world differently when you're writing. So it is worth doing, even if at the end of the particular story you've written you don't like it that much. You're in a different place than where you started, and it is worthwhile effort.
And I also think it was great that you said even yourself, when you were a child, you wished you'd done more writing. So I think that was an outstanding point to make.
Thanks.
Now, what would be your second biggest piece of advice on how writers should go about improving their craft?
Second biggest piece of advice. Well, it's what do I want to say? There's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. I don't know if you've read it. I'd recommend it. It's very interesting. It's about how we become more resilient people, which we need to do. And I think good writers need to be resilient. Writing can actually help you with resilience. So I would say second piece of advice is just to keep challenging yourself to just improve a little bit each time, to just do something a little bit better. Maybe just pick a slightly better word choice this time, or think a little bit more deeply, or try something a little new. Because especially if you're getting started, this is how you grow. This is how you grow as a writer. This is actually how you grow as a person as well.
Now, when you say think deeply about a topic, and this is a phrase you've used repeatedly, are you talking about like going into the nuts and bolts? So if we're discussing a cake recipe, for example, the type of flour, how the flour feels, and how it looks in the measuring cup, things like that? Or are we talking about just the lists of things need to go into them?
Well, it really depends. So if I'm writing a recipe, it depends on what you're writing, what I mean by think deeply. What I really mean is uncovering anything beyond the obvious, So, the flour is white and powdery, if I'm describing something. This analogy, I may spin out of control on this analogy, so forgive me. But by think deeply, I mean think about it not just from what I want to say. Let's say I want to write some point about baking, about flour, but what matters is how am I writing? If I'm writing to you and you are not a baker, maybe I need to think about it from your perspective as well. And maybe there's another way to consider how to describe flour that might make sense to someone who's not a baker. I'm just trying to, by think deeply, I mean, there's the stuff that if you want to write, and I come from a nonfiction background. So if I want to write about writing, it's like, okay, here's all the stuff I know about writing. And I start writing it down. And as I write it down, I think, well, wait, why is this the case? Why does this happen? Maybe I should go research something in cognitive science about why this happens. And so that's what I think is thinking deeply, is scratching beneath the surface to find interesting connections or different perspectives on something that I think I know already. So to learn through the process of writing by, pursuing things, asking more questions about why or how might someone else think about this topic.
I think that's great. I mean, it's almost like instead of just looking at it from your perspective, look at it from almost a 360-degree perspective. Spend some time in your perspective, then move over a couple of degrees and look at it here and then over here.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because, ultimately writing, it's a way that we connect as human beings, right? It's a way that some thoughts go out of my brain and go into your brain, the readers, when we're reading. So the more I'm able to, as a writer, look at different perspectives and get different angles on it, the more resonance I can find with other readers. If I really understand where other people may be coming from, I might write something a little bit differently, and it might, ring a bell in someone else's brain and make a connection there.
All right, now I'm going to ask about your publishing path. Are you traditionally published or self-published?
I am self-published with one exception, which is that the book that I wrote on marketing, which is my first book, I self-published, and then I self-published a second edition. But now it is being traditionally published in Japan, in Japanese.
Oh no, that's fascinating.
I'm a Japanese hybrid, like a Prius. That's what I am.
I think it's fascinating, and I think that's a fun analogy.
Thanks.
So what made you choose the self-publishing path?
So my first book was about marketing, and it was for marketing professionals, a business audience. And I wanted to get it out quickly because I felt it was about marketing for subscription-based businesses. There weren't many authors writing about that. I felt like it was an unaddressed topic that needed to be told. So I decided to self-publish. And also at this point, I had, zero author platform. I had spent my whole career writing basically, ghostwriting for executives or writing in the voice of a brand, but, nobody knew who I was. So no publisher was going to give me a deal for some esoteric topic. So easy enough. So I published it myself. And then the book about writing, I liked so much the benefits of self-publishing. I liked having control over the cover and the price and where it was sold. And I liked being able to get it out in the world quickly and give away content from it freely. So I kept self-publishing for that reason. So I came, for the speed, and I stayed for the control.
Okay, speaking of control, I'm assuming you have a lot to do with your own covers. Now, are those something you make up yourself, or do you hire that task out to a professional?
Oh, I hire a professional. I'm not good at all with anything. I'm a word person. I have a cover designer. I started using him with my first book. His name is Thomas McGee. I really like him a lot. And I send him a very detailed a creative brief. So it's a document that gives him the information that he needs to know what I'm looking for, what the book's about, what the audience is about, what adjectives would describe the book, things like that. So I give him a very detailed brief, and he comes back with 3 cover concepts. And now I've done 4 covers with him because I did a different cover for a second edition. And each time I really like what he comes back with. He's the one who, when I sent him the writer's process brief, he came back with just a book that had a picture of a nice red cup of coffee on the front. I hadn't asked for a cup of coffee, but once I saw it, I said, it's perfect.
Well, I can't agree more on that cup of coffee.
Yeah, thanks.
Now,
so then I did the workplace writer's process, and I thought, well, let's keep the theme here, but I don't want it to be a teacup. I want it to be something that looks industrial like you'd have in the office. So we have a big mug of coffee on that one.
Now, when it comes to editing, do you do all your editing yourself, or do you have a professional look it over? And at what point do you bring in the professional?
Right. So I do a lot of revision myself. Because I'm a professional writer in the sense that this is what I spent my whole career doing. So I do a lot of revision, and then I send it to a copy editor, and I'll get it back from her, do a few more tweaks, put it in the format, the final page layout, and then I send it to a proofreader. So I take a couple passes with professionals through it because it's really important to me that it be as professional as possible. And when you're writing about writing, I think you have to live to a pretty high standard if you can, right?
I'd have to agree with you. Now,
yeah.
On the flip side of that, for someone who is writing fiction, when do you recommend they approach a professional? Should they use a developmental editor, critique partner, and at what point would you recommend they do?
Yeah, so that, I think that has to vary with the author, with how adept they are. I mean, for example, so for a nonfiction book, I don't engage a developmental editor because I think I understand my topic and how I want to structure it. It's that control freak thing again, right? But if I were to try to go into fiction and write a mystery, I would probably engage a developmental editor to make sure that I was on, that this was coming together well. So it's got to vary with the author and how adept you feel at, or how confident you feel in the structure. I don't know that there's one answer. I do feel like editing is a good editor is really going to make the difference, though. I mean, a good copy editor for sure. And if you need it, a good developmental editor or a critique partner, somebody to help you with the structure and making sure that the thing makes sense. I mean, it's so hard to get outside of our own heads as writers. We know what we envision for the story and the experience, but we can't know how somebody else experiences that without our knowledge, right? We know it too well. We need someone to come at it with fresh eyes and tell us where they get lost, where they get confused, where things get boring. We can't know that ourselves.
Okay, I can see your point on this.
Yeah. So it's I wish I had just a pat answer of, I did it this way, so everybody should do it this way. But I'm always a little bit suspicious of people who have those stories because we are pretty different.
Do you think writers, no matter what they're writing, need to put their work away for a little bit from the time they draft it until they try and edit it themselves?
Yes. Yeah. I think you need to get a little distance if you're going to edit. I write in the writer's process. I talk about, incubation. I think it's good to get little breaks to incubate problems when you're drafting as well. And then I think it's pretty important to take a break as much as you can, a little break before you start editing and revising. And again, it's because of the situation that you are so close. When you look at it, you see what you know or what you planned to be there. You don't see necessarily what's really there. There's a psychological phrase for that, which is called the curse of knowledge, which is that we can't see past what we know. What we know is there. So, and time is one way to loosen the hold of that a little bit, is just to take a little break and get some distance.
I find it funny that you mentioned the psychology, because I was in a class one time, I think it was a psychology class, where the professor passed around the 8x11 sheets of paper with the phrase printed on them. And he wanted each person to read the phrase. One person would read the phrase to themselves, and the other person would read the phrase out loud. And it's amazing how many times there would be every one of them had a word left out. But in your mind, almost all of us just put that missing word right in.
Yep. And actually, so if you're in a time crunch, let's say, you've got to get a blog post up by the end of the day and you just finished writing it, so you can't wait a few hours. One of the best things to do is to read it out loud. I like to print it and then go to a different part of the house. So I've even changed my environment so there's more just like disrupting my flow, and read it out loud word for word. And you tend to find things that are wrong that you otherwise wouldn't spot.
Well, I think those are some outstanding tips.
Oh,
now,
thank you.
Before we end the show, like I do with all my guests, would you please tell people where they can find you and your writer's platform on writing processes when you're not on air hanging out with me?
Right. Well, when I leave the coffee shop, I go back to my website, which is just my name, AnneJanzer.com, ANNEJANZER.com. And there's actually a place there where you can, once a week I'll put up a blog post about writing process. And you can sign up to get them by email if you want, or you can just find them there on the homepage if you want to just browse through and see what's there. Hopefully there's something. And there's also a contact form that, so you can, if you have a question or something, or want to send me some kind of feedback on anything, I'd be happy to hear it.
Outstanding. Well, I thank you for joining me in the coffee shop today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
And I think it's time now to pour myself another cup of coffee and settle in with a good book.
Come in store and you'll also get a 10-day sample of Double Wear Longwear Foundation in your perfect shade. Quantities are limited, so don't miss the Estee